Welcome to this edition of Go Vote Omaha, presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm Jasmine Frazier, Communications Director for the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha, and I will be our facilitator for tonight's conversation. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization and does not endorse political candidates or parties. Our purpose is to empower voters and defend democracy. Go Vote Omaha focuses on policy issues, and as a result of our discussions, we hope you will be ready to make an informed decision during election time. The views expressed at this educational event are not necessarily aligned with those of the League of Women Voters, but are expressed at the discretion of our guests. Today, we will hear from two candidates, one from District 11 and one from District 31 for the Nebraska legislature. Our objectives is for voters to hear about issues and policies directly from the candidates in a nonpartisan environment. To find out more about the candidates that will be on your ballot this May, visit vote411.org. Vote411.org is a one-stop shop for election-related information, organized and published by the League of Women Voters of Nebraska volunteers. It provides specifics about the election process, details about general and state candidates, and information directly from candidates who educate the public about their platform by responding to the vote411.org questionnaire. The format for today is as follows. Each candidate will get a 1-minute opening statement, followed by questions prepared by the League of Women Voters. Each candidate will answer every question and will have up to 90 seconds to answer. Following the question portion, each candidate will have a 1-minute closing statement. We alternate speaking order throughout the forum. Before the forum, the candidates drew numbers to determine the initial speaking order. I will introduce them now in that order. The two candidates running for the Nebraska legislature are Terrell McKinney and Mary Ann Folchert. Let's start with opening statements. Terrell?
Thank you. I am Senator Terrell McKinney. I represent District 11, currently in the state legislature, and I'm running to continue representing District 11 in the legislature because I started out this journey 4 years ago to focus on economic equity and opportunity, criminal justice reform, education equity, and healthcare access. Since my time in the legislature, I've been able to secure historic dollars for economic recovery in North and South Omaha. I've also been at the forefront of criminal justice reform changes in the state of Nebraska. I've also been working to make some changes in our educational system to improve outcomes for students in my district, and also investments in healthcare, which has been seen as far as the investments in Charles Drew Healthcare this year from the Department of Economic Development. If you would like to learn more about myself and my campaign, you can visit peopleforterrellmckinney.com. And thank you.
Mary Ann?
My name is Mary Ann Folchert, and I'm running to represent District 31 in the Nebraska State Legislature. District 31 is located in southwest Omaha, mostly Millard, but a little bit of Elkhorn. I'm a lifelong Nebraskan. I grew up in Omaha and graduated from Westside High School in 1992. I'm a former public school teacher, elementary ed, and I have a master's degree in special education. I'm also a mother of 3, a community volunteer, and I'm a guardian and conservator for my oldest brother who has intellectual and developmental disabilities. I decided to run for legislature because I'm frustrated with lawmakers who push partisan agendas that divide us instead of working on the issues that would really make things better for most Nebraskans. I think our families and our communities deserve better, and we deserve lawmakers who will listen to us and act on the things that are important to us.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann. Let's start with the questions. Mary Ann, you're first. What do you hope to accomplish in your time in the legislature?
Some of the things that I'm passionate about are access to health care, especially for women and mothers, and I'm a strong advocate of public education, and I would like to see us strengthen public education and funding for public education. I'm also very concerned about public safety and school safety, and I would like to have an opportunity to address our workforce shortage, and especially supports for working folks like childcare, paid childcare, paid leave, and affordable childcare, and available affordable housing. I think we need to look at more than just the jobs and look at the ways that we can support people and how we can just make life better in general for working families.
Terrell?
What I hope to accomplish in my next term in the legislature is to continue to build on what I've been doing since my time in the legislature, and that is to prioritize economic equity and opportunity for the people in my district, to make sure that it's not the most impoverished district in the state of Nebraska, and I don't want any district to be the most impoverished. I also want to continue to focus on changes in our criminal justice system, especially since a lot of the individuals in the criminal justice system are from the zip codes in my district. I think we have to make sure that we do all that we can to alleviate the flow of people going in, and when they're coming out, that they're not going back, especially since our state is building a new prison. Also, would like to focus more on making sure that we close the educational achievement gaps in the state of Nebraska, and change that by looking at what creative ways can we start, addressing that through policy. I feel like our education system in the state of Nebraska and in the United States is outdated. And I think that's a real reason why we're behind other nations, is because we haven't modernized our educational system. And the last thing is just looking at healthcare access and how can we improve it for everybody, especially people in my district. And lastly, I just don't think I'm done. We started a lot of great work, and I would like to see it through, especially things around the economic recovery. Thank you.
Question 2. What do you consider to be the essential services of a state government? Terrell?
I think the essential services of a state government is to look at everyone in the state and try to take care of the people first. We have a lot of debates in the legislature about policy around the state budget, taxes, and those things. And what I try to keep at the top of mind is the people. And no matter if they are from my district or another district on the western side of the state, is to try to look at how can we create policy and pass policy that takes care of people and keep humanity at the top of our minds. We're sometimes, I feel like people forget that, politics is politics, but a lot of things we talk about affect people directly, especially on the local level. So we must do things that improve the lives of people that we're elected to represent. So I think that's what's essential for the state, is to take care of the people of Nebraska. And one of the number one things I think we could do that is focusing on economic equity and opportunity, and making sure no kid goes to sleep hungry, no kid goes to school without a meal, no kid grows up in poverty and has to deal with life in poverty. So if we could eliminate poverty and give people the things they need, the basic needs, I think that's what we should focus on as a state.
Mary Ann?
I think one of the most important services for the state is to provide strong public education for all students in all zip codes. That's something I feel very passionate about. I think that education can provide improved economic outcomes for folks, and we can start as early as very young children coming into school. So to me, that's an important service. And I agree with the senator when he talks about keeping people at the forefront and making sure that the policies that we're passing improve people's lives or help folks in their lives instead of making things more difficult for them, especially when we're talking about taxation and the services that are available to folks, and supports for people who need support. My brother has intellectual and developmental disabilities, and that's an important group that I think we need to take care of and work hard to support.
Question 3. Knowing that young professionals increasingly prefer walking, biking, and taking transit over driving, what should the state be doing to invest in or encourage active and public transportation options? Mary Ann.
I think that is a good question, and probably depends too on which part of the state we're in, and it might look differently based on what's available in the city versus in the western part of the state. Infrastructure is important, and having public transportation is critical. We need to look at ways that we can provide that service to people. I know in Omaha, public transportation only goes so far west. It doesn't really even cover where I live. There isn't a bus systems, I don't think, goes even west of 144th, which is where my district begins. So that would be something we could certainly consider. I know a lot of folks are interested in carpooling, and not just for the sake of convenience, but for the environment. And we can look at incentivizing that too.
Terrell.
I think we have to look at improving our public transportation system. We don't really have a robust public transportation system, and I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of young people don't utilize our public transportation system. So looking at ways and creative ways on how can we improve our transportation system, and how can we attract young people to start using public transportation. Because I remember as a kid, I used public transportation a lot, but nowadays you don't see a lot of kids getting on buses as I saw when I was growing up as a kid. So just, I think also connecting with younger generations and talking to them about what do you want to see for the future of our communities, and and how can that work. I think also there's been discussions about high-speed rail or some type of rail system from Omaha to Lincoln. I think those type of creative ideas is how we keep our talent here and how we attract more talent to the state of Nebraska. But number one is improving our public transportation system, and also engaging with younger generations to figure out what exactly do they want, and how can we as a state be assistants to making sure those things are seen through. Thank you.
Next question. How should the problem of prison overcrowding be handled? Terrell?
The number one thing, well, not the number one thing, but to me, the number one thing to look at with prison overcrowding is, why is the prison overcrowded? I think when you look at that and you look at the root causes to incarceration, I think it goes back to looking at high poverty rates, especially, as I stated earlier, a lot of the people in our prisons come from my district. I think if we start addressing poverty intentionally, we start addressing prison overcrowding. I think we have to look at our sentencing structures and how people are over-incarcerated and sit in prison for far too long. I think we have to evaluate what is justice and how do we really view justice. I think also, our parole and probation systems have to be improved. And I've been trying to work on legislation to improve both because it's needed. I think it's a multi-layered problem. I don't think there's one solution, but I think if you start to address poverty, start looking at sentencing and improving the parole and probation systems, but also improving their lives inside of, those institutions, we'll start seeing change.
Mary Ann?
I think if we only focus on the punishment aspect, then we'll never have enough we'll never have enough dollars or space to address that. We have to look at sentencing reform, especially for nonviolent offenders. We need to look at fines and fees and how that creates a situation where some people just get further and further dug in. We need to look at mental health services and facilities so that people don't end up in prison when what they really need is mental health services. And looking at some of those other factors and not just the punishment side of things. My background is education, so again, I think education is so important, and we can begin that even with very, very young children. We see discrepancies, kids entering school, and something like universal pre-K or expanded early childhood education can help set kids on the right path, and giving them support throughout school. Keeping them in school is also really important, and schools will need resources for that. But the senator had a bill that addressed expulsions, young children, and we need to keep kids in school.
Next question. What specific measures do you support to meet the state's growing infrastructure needs? Mary Ann.
Well, the state, we need to keep our infrastructure modernized, making sure that we can meet the needs of folks across the state of Nebraska. I know there are some concerns, especially in the rural areas, about things like broadband and internet connectivity. And as technology becomes more important, more and more important, even in things like agriculture, we need to make sure that we're staying modern and keeping up with all of that. And also, as we move to greener energy with vehicles, electric vehicles and things of that nature, we need to have support across the state for being able to charge electric cars and support that transition as well.
Terrell?
I think we have to, number one, look at how do we create new revenue streams for the state. How can we bring in more dollars that we're not accessing now? A lot of our neighbors have, and probably will in the near future, legalize marijuana. The state of Colorado brought in revenues close to $300 million last year. So that's something we should look at. I think we should also look at how can we leverage federal grants and federal funding. There's a lot of federal funding out there that us as a state we miss out on because we don't really go after those grants as much as we should, like other states. So I think looking at other revenue streams to address the infrastructure problem, and also going after federal dollars, but also we, honestly speaking, we have to check our politics and whether or not our politics fit the future of the state. If we want to grow as a state, we got to look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, is our politics, the things we're passing and doing, conducive to a sustainable state government and a state going forward? And that's just the honest truth. Thank you.
Next question. Do you believe Nebraska as a state should have an overall climate strategy? Terrell.
Yes. Climate change is real as much as people try to deny it. It's real and we need to prepare for it. There's a lot of things that is changing and we have to put a plan together to make sure we're prepared, and not prepared honestly for us, it's for the generations after us. One thing that, frustrates me sometimes I feel like I'm fighting battles that my generation shouldn't have to fight. And I don't want to leave a world to my daughter, my nieces and nephews, and other kids that I coach and mentor, or just kids, period, across the state to have to fight. So I think we have to get real and have honest conversations and just be truthful about the nature of the world, and it's changing because of us. But let's do all that we can to make sure that if once things do change, our kids are set up for the future to be prepared to address those issues and not have to make up for the time we spend arguing and polarizing issues because we, as adults, couldn't get to the table and find an agreement.
Mary Ann.
I agree. The climate change is real, and human activity does impact that. And as a state that relies so heavily on agriculture, I think we absolutely need to pay attention to climate change because it will impact that industry. And if we want to have a long-term agricultural systems that last and into the future, we need to protect that. And that's going to mean that we have to look at the effects of our activities and our energy sources and all of those things. We also, Nebraska also has natural resource in water that we really need to protect, and we've already seen we're seeing quite a bit of contamination in our water, and 85% of Nebraskans get their drinking water from groundwater. And so we need to continue making sure that we are monitoring the effects of our activities and that we have strong oversight and enforcement from our Department of Energy and Environment so that we can protect those natural resources.
Okay, the last question, from what funding sources will you draw to educate our state's children? Mary Ann.
I think that education is a responsibility of the state, and I think we do need to be firm in protecting public funds for public education. And there may be other opportunities for us to get creative with funding and to use some private-public type partnerships, but ultimately, education is a responsibility of the state, and we need to protect funding and look for ways that we are providing funding not only for education needs to be more equitable. We need to find ways to pour resources into especially those schools that need it the most. And I believe strongly that we can do that with public funds for public schools.
Terrell?
I think education should be fully funded by the state. I think it's our responsibility. We've been having conversation this year about, foundation funding and those type of things. We probably do have an over-reliance on property taxes to fund public education or education, period. And that is what's got us in a lot of this mess that we're in. And just talking with the schools, it's just having the trust in the state or state government to continue to fund public education, education, period, is their hesitation with it. So I think going forward, we just have to make sure that it's a commitment from the state to continue to fully fund education. And it's tough now, especially with term limits and those type of things, and making sure that everybody has the same, foundation, the same thoughts that, we should be funding education. It's our duty as a state and as senators to make sure each kid from our communities can get an adequate education and to make sure that it's an equitable education and we close the achievement gaps as best as possible.
Okay, we will start with closing statements. Terrell?
Thank you. Again, I am Senator Terrell McKinney. I'm running to represent District 11 in the state legislature, which encompasses most of North Omaha, again, in the state legislature. And I'm running again because, you know, I've started a path 4 years ago to focus on economic equity and opportunity. And in doing so, I've been able to secure $400+ million for North and South Omaha, and any more dollars on top of that. I've been at the forefront of criminal justice policy changes in the state of Nebraska, and I would like to continue to do so. I've been focused on improving educational outcomes for the students that I represent in my community and providing more healthcare access and healthcare investments to improve the lives of my community that has the lowest life expectancy in the state of Nebraska. I'm not done, and I don't think we're not done as far as trying to change the trajectory of our community and making sure that the future is bright for North Omaha, to make sure that those investments that the state committed are seen through and are used properly, to make sure that we aren't the poorest community in the state no more. And that's why I'm running, to continue to fight for you like I've been doing and I will continue to do. And if you would like to learn more, visit my website, peopleforterrellmckinney.com. Thank you.
Mary Ann?
I would just close by saying that I think Nebraska is a great place to live and to work and to raise a family. But we're not without our challenges, especially as we look ahead to the future. And if we want to continue to grow the good life for our kids and our grandkids and great-grandkids, we need lawmakers who work for us. And we need lawmakers who will take the time to actually listen to us and to work on the things that are important to us and that will make our lives better. And that's something I'm committed to doing. And I know that working together by listening to one another and respecting one another, we can make the good life even better for all Nebraskans. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight. If you want to learn more about the candidates and issues that will be on your ballot, visit vote411.org for a personalized resource tool. A special thank you to the candidates participating in tonight's conversation. For the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha, I'm Jasmine Frazier, and as always, we urge you to be informed and be a voter on May 14th. Go vote Omaha.